So let's try and come down to the next presentation. It's going to be. I would like to have the honor to introduce you to Rajiv Panda, who is the head of technical of South Asia Regional Initiative for Energy Integration. So Rajiv is an engineer, management, research, and development professional with rich and diverse experience and expertise in energy and power system engineering, climate policy and low carbon growth, regional energy cooperation, policy research, analysis, and advocacy, power system consultancy, power plant operation, and high and ultra-high voltage substation construction. So he possesses extensive experiences in leading various assignments. Let's give a big hand to Rajiv.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Given a topic on cross-border electricity trade, but I think my previous speakers alluded to some of the aspects of the cross-border electricity trade, so I will try to not just repeat those slides. But the idea of this presentation is to give an insight. I won't be too technical, not to make it boring, but the idea is to give an insight what is happening on the cross-border electricity trade front and how the evolution of the South Asian power sector can actually happen through rapid expansion of cross-border electricity trade. Before I go, I just would like to give a very brief introduction to SARI and what we are doing. When we started this program in 2016 years back, there were very few takers of regional energy integration, and if you talk to people, governments, and in discuss about the concept, you will find very few takers. But 16 years down the line, we're very happy to see that takers are happening, and of course there are a few more takers, what we see 16 years back. The point I am highlighting here is that these things takes time. There are a lot of complexities associated with regional energy integration. There are geopolitical compulsions, which makes the process quite long. From a technical perspective, when you have a technical discussion, you find very hardly any issues in terms of technical challenges. But when you go into the legal, regulatory, and the complexity of two countries getting interconnected, that actually makes the process a little bit long. So the idea is that when we started with the basic, and of course, currently we are focusing on three primary key areas. One is the coordination of policy and regulatory issues, which is the point number one, and second is on the transmission integration, how more transmission integration and connection can happen, and of course, how market can be created, because market has its own issues, but if you want to really promote this level of trade, you need certain level of market. Of course, one can argue on whether I like a competitive market, everything is on market basis, that's still a question, but you need some sort of market. So that's precisely what we are looking into. Of course, we work with the South Asian country governments, and we have task forces which look into these three key specific issues. I think yesterday morning we have a panel discussion, and I think most of these points also came up in the discussion. Of course, that was from the point of investment, how investment can be mobilized. But if you really see, you need regulations, and without having a regulatory, some sort of, not necessarily a very high profile regulation takes care of all the aspects, which is a little bit difficult, but some basic aspect of regulation must be there, and it has to be there between two countries, or if you have a bilateral, of course, between two countries, or if you have multilateral, again, it becomes a little bit more challenging. So there has to be certain amount of regulation. Of course, if you want to promote investment, unless until you have a policy and regulatory kind of framework, the investment won't happen, because the investor will ask questioning what will happen if this is not there. So therefore, those basic things must be there. Of course, on the technical side, of course, today there is something like 2400 megawatts. You may not need that level of harmonization. You can still manage with some artificial instruments. But as you go on, and when you have a more interconnected AC system, you need certain level of harmonization as far as the operating procedure and reports are concerned. Again, I am not touching the market part, because market will also keep some aspect into it in terms of interconnecting to grids. Of course, open access is important, but I won't necessarily advocate open access right away, because open access needs certain basic ingredients in the respective power sector. So, I'm talking from the perspective of CDET, not necessarily on the domestic power markets. Of course, you need transmission pricing, and interestingly, recently we're starting to do something like a mock bidding for a Southeast Regional Power Exchange. So there will be a bidding platform where the respective country will allow to bid and just to see the feasibility of how a power exchange can operate and how it can be helpful to the countries. I think this is a basic slide. Many people know what is the various aspects of the Southeastern power sector. But the point is that there are a lot of diversity between countries. I mean, of course, India is a very big country in terms of size and capacities. But if you see the other countries like Sri Lanka, which is hydro-dominated, like to see Bangladesh, which is gas-dominated, but having a huge resource crunch, they don't have much resources to take care of their demand. So there is plenty of diversity, and when you link to grids, it can actually help to take the advantage of the diversities. Potential, we all know that we have a large hydro potential, but the point I would like to make here is that there is also a large renewable energy potential. It's quite striking that renewable energy is growing very, very fast, not only in India but across the globe, when actually oil prices is quite low. This is for the first time it's happening that despite the fossil fuel prices are low, the renewable energy expansion is happening very rapidly. And when you look into the renewable energy integration, basically if you are more renewable energy, you need basically hydro and gas to take care of the balancing of the grid. And in that context, maybe the hydro development of the Southeastern power sector can actually be helpful if one can put all the instruments in place. I think previous speaker alluded to what is happening on the trading side. I'll just add one more that recently the 3 megawatt trade between India, the Manipur state of India and Myanmar has also started. It's a very small beginning, but it has a huge potential if we start linking more and more integration. So just to add that apart from India and Nepal, Bhutan, the trade with Myanmar has also started. Of course, huge amount of trading potential is there. I won't want to go into that. What drives, I think, is quite well known to people. That we have a very low per capita energy consumption. The economic growth are very high, so you need to sustain those economic growth. But the right corner of the slide, I would like to highlight that if you like to interconnect, and if you take few examples of the interconnection, you can see the amount of investment you make and the amount of benefits you get. So there are substantial benefits to come if you start integrating the power systems. Yesterday there was a reference to the Indian, what India thinks as far as expanding CBD is concerned, and sometimes it happens that the other countries feel that, well, India is adding so much of capacity, so whether this hydropower will make sense or not, because India is also continue to add. But if you see at the highest policy level, there are strong sense for more import and export of cross-border electricity trade. So you see there are some scenario analysis by, now the Niti Aayog, but as well the Planning Commission of India, which mentioned that significant import and export can happen between India and other Southeastern countries. Sometimes when we discuss about CBEQ, we are pretty much focused on the eastern side, that is Nepal, Bhutan, and India, but significant things are happening on the western part of the subcontinent, that is on the Pakistan side. And it's quite active, it's not in paper, and this could be probably fast multilateral cross-border trade that might happen, and it's going to carry the powers from the decentralization hydropower all the way to Pakistan. And recently the inauguration ceremony happened, and the project is expected to be completed by 2018, and this is very significant. These are some numbers just to tell you that significant transmission interconnection can happen as we go along. You can see the slides. There was a mention about hydropower. I would like to say that the development of hydropower has not been very easy. If you see globally also, we have been struggling to develop hydropower. So it's okay that if you plan a little bit, you won't achieve that much, that's okay, because it's not very easy to develop hydropower, and there are a lot of challenges associated with that. But if you see globally also, we have only developed 90% of the potential. It just makes a case that how difficult it is to develop hydropower, because there are challenges which certainly, when you can't, estimate everything on the planning horizon. But the point is that if you continue to pursue and strive to develop hydropower, probably you may not achieve the full what you have targeted, but at least you can achieve maybe 40%, 50%, which still is a very significant number. Even for Bhutan, for example, one can argue that Bhutan is well-funded, well-financed, and very active cooperation between two governments. But despite all these factors, Bhutan is almost going to achieve 50 to 60% of what they have targeted. So the point is that we have to keep pursuing despite all the challenges that we face in hydropower.
We have a bit of change for the morning schedule, and Mr. Ginendra hasn't been arrived yet, so he'll be speaking probably after the tea break upon his arrival. So we have now, it means that the next session is going to be presented by NGI from Perth on safety and reliable dams, and they will share experiences they learned from their projects internationally. So let me give a short introduction of Dr. Andrew Deeks, who is the Managing Director of NGI Perth. He is a principal geotechnical engineer with experiences in onshore and offshore geotechnics, spanning research, project management, and engineering design. So he obtained his master's and PhD from Cambridge University, and he currently leads the Australian business of the Norwegian Geotechnical Institute. Andrew has worked on a wide range of onshore and offshore consulting projects throughout the world. And it's, the joint presenter will be his colleague, Oyvind Torbesrud, who is the senior engineer of NGI. He is a senior geotechnical engineer with experiences in onshore and offshore geotechnics, spanning research, project management, and engineering design, pretty similar to Andrew's. And he has a particular numerical analysis expertise. He has been working on a wide range of offshore and onshore consulting projects throughout the world. So let's.
Thank you. Good to talk to you today. About safe and reliable dam and tunnel design. NGI offers expertise on the behaviour of soil, rock, and ice, and their interaction with the built environment. Obviously, earlier on we've heard lots about issues with policy and regulation and the transition market. We're looking here about issues with the ground, which are obviously a large portion of hydropower projects, and how to handle those issues safely and reliably and cost effectively. I'm going to do the beginning part of this presentation, and I'll hand over to my colleague. So I'll just talk a little bit about NGI. So we're a private foundation headquartered in Norway. So as a private foundation, we don't have owners and or shareholders, and so the profit from the business is reinvested back in the business. We have a focus on research and development that is useful for society, and that represents about 30% of what we do. And consultancy represents the remaining 70%. The image is a bit clearer on the screen on the right. So then we have offices in Norway, America, and Australia, and a joint venture in KL. Around 200 people or so in Norway, and teams, we're almost 12 people in Perth, and a similar size in Houston. We welcome sharing our knowledge, so we host about 20 to 30 guest researchers in Oslo every year who are learning about the behaviour of soil, rock, and ice. Our mission is to be an international centre of expertise in geoscience, to proactively develop things that are useful for society, and so that's in our research and development is for a need that is in the near future. And we do that by continuous professional development of our staff, but also through educational outreach, so sharing our knowledge with others. The markets we work in range from offshore energy, so oil and gas, but renewable, offshore wind and offshore wave, building, construction, transportation, which dam engineering sits in, cross-linking with natural hazards, so understanding and communication of risk and hazard estimation and consequence understanding, and environmental engineering, so hydrology, contaminated land and cleanup, and geoagriculture. With that, I'm going to hand over to Erwin.
Thank you. So I'm going to go a little bit more into what we have done and what we can provide within hydropower development. So since NGI was founded in the 1950s, we have been involved in design, construction, and monitoring of dams and tunnels and caverns for hydropower. So we designed about 65% of the embankment dams in Norway. That's 115 dams, and also several dams worldwide. So some of you may know this book series of hydropower development that's given up by the Norwegian Technical University. So we also wrote one of the books there for rockfield dams. And we've been active in the international development of asphalt concrete cores as for use in dams. Since the 1990s, we have more and more projects use risk assessments and reliability design methods for improved safety of design. For rock and tunneling, we developed a Q system for the determination of rock quality and also support systems. That was developed in the early 1970s, but it's still under development with NGI. We also do continuous research and application of methods for geosurveys, how you can map geological conditions more cost effective. Just an example of the asphalt concrete core concept. So it's for embankment dams where you use asphalt concrete as a 1 to 2 meter core in your dam, and then you have the rock fill on each side. So it serves as a membrane, and it's very simple and robust construction method. It has a high rate of construction. And it also self-healing of cracks. So if you have an earthquake and get cracks in the membrane, it self-heals after just a few hours. So this is some examples of embankment dams that NGI has been involved in. This is the La Romaine 2 dam in Quebec in Canada. The dam is 614 megawatts, and it's part of a big river project of 1550 megawatts. So this is an asphalt core embankment dam. Then this is one of the dams in Norway that's been done a lot of research on it, and it was constructed between 1973 and 1976. And NGI has been involved in various parts of design and in 2011 when it was done strengthening and tightening of the dam. We're also involved in monitoring of settlements and movements of the dam. So this figure to the left shows traditional setup with pore pressure measurements and generators from 1982, while the picture to the right is a method we use today by using satellite images to monitor how much the dam displaces per year. So that just as an idea, the scale of the red color on the picture to the right is 3 millimeters per year. Then another example where we use both monitoring and numerical methods to predict how the dam behave. So this is the Solasny Most Dam in Poland. It's a tailings dam, so they keep adding material on top of the dam, and they see that it displays with increased velocity with time. So that's why they use quite heavy monitoring system together with our numerical analysis to predict how long they can keep extending the height of the dam. And we are also looking at mitigations to increase the lifetime. Then over to tunnels and caverns, which also is something we have a lot of in Norway. So we have about 1,000 road tunnels 700 railroad tunnels, 290 hydropower tunnels, in total more than 3,000 kilometers. About 50 small diameter TBM tunnels, 200 underground hydropower stations, 36 subsea tunnels, and 10 to 20 oil and gas storage facilities. And in addition to that, an unknown number of rock caverns. So the important thing in rock tunneling is support of the rock and reinforcement. And as I mentioned earlier, the Q system is a nice, easy system to quantify the rock quality and what kind of support you need. And that's this chart to the left is the original system. And actually, last year, NGI developed an app that you can download from the NGI website. Then on to geoservice. To understand the rock quality, you need to do investigations, and there are several methods. The traditional way is to go out and look at what you got and do or drill down and do core testing. A more effective way is to start off with a remote sensing program in geophysics to cover a larger area, and then find out areas of where you have weak zones, where you have geological features that you want to check out further, and then you can end up with a smaller scope of ground investigations. So this is an example of airborne geophysics, so it's electromagnetic surveys. So you have an electromagnetic ring under a helicopter or an airplane, and you fly over the area, and you can measure the resistivity of the rock. And it's a very effective way to cover large areas. And you can then draw maps like this figure, where you have a 3D visualization of the resistivity of the rock. So this shows a cross section where you can typically get down to 300 to 500 meter depth with this kind of measurements. So this we have done this in several hydropower tunnels actually. So this is an example where method was used to identify weak zones within a gneiss area. So and that makes it possible to go out and check and do reports in those specific areas. And we have done this both in African countries and in Bhutan, as far as I know. Another area that we also use this kind of method is for landslides. So this is an example where satellite images are used to interpret where you can have slow moving landslides that means that you move just maybe a few centimeters or half a meter a year. But it's an indication of something that can where you can get this landslide in the future. This is a project in India, and we also do other types of risk assessments for geohazards that can be earthquake, landslide, avalanches, rockfalls, basically everything. And this is an example of a risk assessment we did for ADBC in 2010. This is a hazard risk assessment in Nepal, where we looked at hazards as this example is earthquake hazard. So it's which areas in Nepal that has the largest earthquake risk, and then the picture to the right is similarly the risk of earthquake-induced landslides. So, as a summary, we try to deliver efficient and cost-effective geosurveys. Reason for that is to reduce the risk of having unexpected ground conditions that can lead to redesigns or delays in projects. We also have a lot of national engineering expertise to enable safe and cost-effective solutions. And same within slope stability and geohazards to enable safe infrastructure.
Thanks, Martin. So we're going to have a 15-minute break, and the coffee and tea is ready outside. We're supposed to come back to this room after 15 minutes. Let's say it's like 11:20, 11:15, yeah. Thank you very much. Next 30 to 40 minutes, we're going to have a panel discussion on strengthening South Asian power grid interconnection. And I would be very happy to introduce the moderator of this panel discussion, Mr. Shia Singh Bhatt, who's the Deputy Managing Director of Nepal Electricity Authority. So Mr. Shia Singh Bhatt is the Deputy MD of Nepal Electricity Authority. He graduated as electrical engineer from GB Pant University of Agriculture and Technology from India in 1982, and he's later on obtained an MBA degree from Pokhara University of Nepal. He has been working for over a decade at various positions in the area of generation, transmission, distribution, system operation, and trading of electricity. So let's give a big hand to Mr. Shia Singh Bhatt and invite him to the stage. I would like to also invite some of our morning speakers back to the stage. Mr. Sri Sasmo, Director of Power Grid Corporation of India Limited, and Mr. Surendra, Deputy Managing Director of Nepal Electricity Authority, Mr. Rajiv Panda, who is the Head of Technical and South Asia Regional Initiative for Energy Integration. We have a last-minute dropout of one panelist from Bhutan, so the panel will be joined by the gentlemen on the stage.
Partition on strengthen South Asia power grid interconnections, a new future of win-win cooperation. The topic is self-explanatory. So first of all, I would request Mr. Sasmal to please explain what this win-win means in relation to cross-border interconnection in South Asia. What is this actually win-win meaning?
Good morning again. Now, when I made my presentations, I have spoken some of the things, like 6 high-capacity corridors that are being constructed for the final evaluation. Initially, what we are thinking of APC in Nepal, there is a problem of generations, and Nepal people need the power, and from the neighboring country like India. And India is also now getting a surplus slowly, though there is a congestion in few pockets, but there are a lot of power is available in India. Nepal can very well draw those power, and that is possible. First, we have to charge this Muzaffarpur Dalkewad substation at 400 kV. Though it was planned at 220 kV, that will give only additional 120 megawatt only. Not much of relief. But if you charge at 400 kV, with N-1 condition also, we can have 500 to 600 megawatt. The line length is not that much. So that is first, till your generation comes for marketing purpose, to sell, whether it is to come to India or any other countries. But before that, to meet the deficit of the power in Nepal, this 400 kV line that has already been constructed, the major hurdles is already over. Only a substation it can put in 14 to 18 months time. That is what we have targeted earlier when we discussed in the joint working group. If we made it by December 17, then at least another 500 to 600 megawatt can come. Second part I touched is the 175 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2022. That means if your hydro potential has developed by that time, that will be a great relief for a synchronous operations. Even if renewable energy is not there, maybe at evening time or a bad weather condition or something like that. Once hydro is available in the network, then of course that will be great help in the stabilization and dynamic condition to meet any dynamic situation in the case of disturbance. So I think we should go ahead with more additional like second 400 kV interconnections for a synchronous operation. Now if you put a 400 kV and with a limited operations, you can have a localized operation or radial feeding. But with 400 kV additional line, you ensure there is a synchronous operation and outage of one 400 kV line will not cause a major blackout in Nepal. So we must look forward and go ahead with this. So it is a win-win for both, I think, for both the countries.
Surenji, since strengthening a cross-border interconnection, we'll also need the strengthening of the domestic networks also. So how, because if we strengthen the domestic networks and the cross-border interconnections, there will be costs, there will be a certain country beneficiary. So how it would be win-win for both the countries that are interconnected? So would you like to output something on his statement, or do you agree exactly with him? Because how it would be win-win, because there will be one country main beneficiary and another country financing to it. Is it the case, or how it would be win-win?
Thank you, Bharati. First, we have been talking for quite some time now, harnessing the hydro potential of Nepal and exporting electricity to India or South Asian region. Having said that, probably our transmission network is not in a condition to support that, and we need massive reinforcement of our transmission infrastructures, and we'll be doing that. Okay, we are going for massive transmission infrastructures for the domestic market, and we have also taken into consideration the transmission reinforcement required for exporting power to India. When it comes to the interconnection between India and Nepal and interconnecting with the other region of the South Asia or the SAARC member countries, let me be very frank. In order to export the huge power, we need the extra high voltage transmission links with India. And India is located in a very strategic position. India has borders with all the SAARC member countries except for, I think, Afghanistan. And India has the transmission networks with Bhutan, Nepal, and Bangladesh. And the trade between any two countries other than India without India's involvement is not possible. So if we want to explore the markets in the SAARC member countries, then interconnection should be at high voltage, and this should be in the synchronous mode. So we cannot handle a synchronous mode of interconnection if we are looking for exporting power to other regions as well. And having said that, even in Nepal, I think there is a fear. If we connect our grid system, we synchronize the Nepalese grid system with the Indian grid system. Probably the overdraw from the Indian side could trigger system collapse in Nepal. That is why we have to take the precautionary measures. And asynchronous mode can be thought of, but when you have only one interconnection, I think we need to have at least 3-4 interconnections with India. One interconnection at high voltage is not going to work. And that is why we need to develop the second interconnection as early as possible. That way, I firmly believe that the interconnections should be at the synchronous level. In order to maintain the stability, we need to develop at least 3-4 interconnections.
Rajiv, there are we already have two understandings of what a win-win means in case of strengthening the cross-border interconnections. Can you project your understandings of the win-win?
Yeah, certainly. Let me say, when we say trade, what basically we mean trade? Trade is something that there is a comparative advantage. A country A has something, a country B has not something, which is right to trade. So when we say win-win as a terminology, we should also understand the perspective in which we are saying win-win, because that is very important. Otherwise, it will become a zero-sum game. So one country feels that my resources are being exploited, I am not getting anything out of it, and other country thinks that I am getting the full benefit out of it. So therefore, in the context of say Nepal or Bhutan, the comparative advantage you have that you have a large resource potential, and of course hydro has its own peculiarity in terms of sharing with other power systems. So it should be seen in that perspective. Now the context of win-win make a little bit of complication when we don't know what is the market design, because you are arguing the win-win situation, assuming yes to the market design, and then expecting that the country A will benefit X from the market design and country B will benefit of X from the market design. Therefore, it should be seen from that perspective that yes, there is a huge amount of hydro potential, it can be sold, and I think when you talk about market design, I'm just linking with the win because then hydropower has to be competitive. For example, suppose the initial tariff for the fraud loading say become 4 rupees, 5 rupees, and then you want to say sell in probably in India, then you need to understand how this thing can be done. So therefore, the win-win should be seen in a context, and it should not be treated like a zero-sum game where A country is gaining and B country losing. And trade is all about having this fair deal. There will be some gain, there will be something somebody else will going to say. That's the whole concept of trade. So therefore, win-win should be seen from that perspective, which will make the argument a little bit more practical, rather than going into the extreme view where trade is not helpful for the big countries. So I just.
Yeah, two parties they conclude a deal. Most economic deal would be when both the parties think by themselves that I have lost. That would be the most economic deal. But at the end, this deal would never be implemented. So the thing is win-win when both parties thinks I have been benefited with this deal. So such kind of deal standing cross-border line in terms of economic finances, in terms of operational issues. That kind of deal would be win-win. Now once again, I will start again from Rajiv. While making the interconnections in the South Asia, be it India with Bangladesh, be it India with Bhutan and India with Nepal, these interconnections we have developed into different models. One is G2G model, government to government, both governments put the money. The other is commercial model. We have Nepal and India, we have utilized commercial model with two different SPVs. What would be the best model for strengthening these interconnections or going for new interconnections? What would be the best model of interconnections?
No, I think it's a very, very important question. Basically, you are asking who should support the development of the transmission, the cross-border transmission systems. Now, let me answer by saying that all over the world, if you see any other regional power system, government has played a significant role. And on transmission side, they are probably at the front runner in terms of establishing the transmission link, because we know that transmission are not easy to build and it has its own peculiarity in terms of getting it built. So therefore, I would rather suggest that I mean the India-Nepal example is a very good one. I'm not discouraging that kind of investment, but the transmission interconnection government has to take a lead, irrespective of whether we talk about Nepal or whether we talk about India. And even in India, Bhutan context, I mean the majority of the transmission on the Indian side is being constructed by the PGCI, which is again is a government-owned entity. So I think the government role in terms of developing transmission, I mean the road transmission, not going into the generation aspects, is very important. And of course, then the question comes whether it should be on a competitive bidding basis or what kind of that's a different ballgame altogether. But government roles in transmission interconnection cannot be seen, cannot be denied. And actually, that's going to be the market. Because if you don't have interconnection or adequate transmission capacity, there is no question of market. I mean, market won't evolve. So I will stick with that answer.
Surajji, when we developed Muzaffarpur-Talgewar cross-border line, that time we realized that there are two different regulatory regimes on two sides of the border. Getting a land clearance, getting a license, getting techno-economic clearance for the line on the other side of the border is quite different than what we have this side of the border. That's why we had two different companies, one on the other side of the border, one this side of the border, so that they can clear all the regulatory procedures on the two sides. And that was assumed necessary that time. Somehow things happened. But during the course, we realized that to get those clearances from the respective regulatory regimes, it takes longer time if it is in a commercial model. So there was an assumption that had it been G2G, all these processes would have been easier. So could you comment on that, whether we should go forward with the next cross-border transmission line at G2G model or commercial model?
Okay, I know the opinion that this would be, it would be better if we go for G2G, because as you correctly mentioned, pointed out that going on a commercial mode of development, there are many orders, and sometimes it takes a much longer period than expected. The time is a very critical and important factor, and it's still, you see, not only from that perspective, even the operation of the two synchronized fields, we need to take into consideration many factors, because our planning criteria are different, our system protection parameters are different. Even from that perspective also, sometimes it is very difficult for synchronization. We need to have the common harmonized code, harmonized operating system. But so far as the development is concerned, probably it's better to go for G2G level, because you see, once the transmission links are developed on commercial mode, it has to price. When the trading volume is less, because in the initial years the trading volume will always be less, and the less trading volume is not going to support the high investment cost. Somebody has to pay for that. And if government supports the development of the interconnection links, probably government can absorb the initial cost, and even though the trading volume is less, this will be still feasible, and this will be commercially viable also. Export of power or trading of power will be viable. We need to look at the pricing concept as well. From that perspective, G2G, I believe that G2G mode of development is still the preferred development. Maybe in future, when the market is fully developed, that's probably the development of transmission methods on a commercial mode can be considered. But for some time being, this has to be on G2G level.
So it's very nice that Mr. Samsal is here. He holds a very important position in Power Grid. And I would like to put a question that we have developed Muzaffarpur Dhakebal cross-border line in commercial model with 2 SPPs on the either side. And these 2 SPPs have a specific construction license for the two transmission lines, and the transmission licenses are time-bound. So even if it is seamless line from Nepal to India, after certain period, the Nepalese transmission license will expire. I don't know what is on the other side. In that case, it has been found very difficult to develop transmission line under the commercial model with a definite period of licensing. So would you suggest that the Gorakhpur second cross-border line that has been deemed, it should be developed in G2G model? What is the possibility?
I think, in my opinion, first the transmission network has to develop, irrespective of whether there is a commercial transaction or there or not. Let us build the infrastructure first. Now, how infrastructure can be built? There is 2 ways. Like the earlier one, we have gone ahead with another company. Otherwise, my opinion is that because being a government company, we have a license holder of the transmission line. Only procedure, we have to follow the procedures, government procedures. And if it is given to government to make the transmission line, so and once they make the investment, afterwards also they will get the return on their investment. So in my opinion, always I prefer let government make it. It is a government to government. And on Indian portion side, let PowerGrid being the central transmission utilities now can construct the line. And on the Nepal part, let the Nepal authority people do it instead of going through, because then again there is a long process and all these things. And once administrative or government support is there, your right of way also minimized. Let us understand that part of it. Because some private party, they have to maybe struggle slightly to get the right of way. But if government, we have a time-bound program and we have to keep a target, margin and all these things, then we have to plan accordingly. Let us say, initially if you see earlier years, our forest clearance takes 1.5 years to 2 years. So we keep 3 years as the transmission system. But nowadays with the faster procedures of forest clearances, 14 months to 18 months is sufficient for us to construct a transmission line. I am talking transmission line, it's a 7 to 8 kV, let us say double circuit, so the big transmission system. The small transmission line may take less time, but there is a major transmission line with 36 conductor running and all these things. That is even 14 months to 18 months. So on my personal view, it should be a government investment. Government will get that return on investment once it is become commercialized. Once you make infrastructure, then there will be the private players will come for the marketing purpose. Then that investment what we have made, that will get a return from that. So this is, I think this is personally my opinion on this.
So on this issue, how the cross-border lines should be developed, I think there is a good convergence among the panelists. In the domestic transmission lines, you can go through a commercial model, you can go through the companies, you can go to BOOT, BT or whatever it is. But if it is a case of cross-border transmission lines, and if it is the strengthening of this, further strengthening of these transmission lines, to the extent possible, it should go through G2G process. There is a convergence. Now, on the commercial side we have discussed, I would put another question on the technology side. In the interconnections that we have in South Asia, there are synchronous interconnections. India and Nepal, we have decided to have synchronous AC synchronous interconnection. But Bangladesh and India, they have DC back-to-back asynchronous. And similarly, synchronous with Bhutan also. So, on the technology wise, what would be the best decision for different interconnections in this region? What technology would be most suitable, most appropriate, so that each country is better linked with any third country or than its nearest neighbor? What would be the best technological model of interconnections for yourself?
Let us see why Bangladesh we have gone for back-to-back. Initially, let us say 7-8 years back, it was a decision in the government itself. All SAARC countries should be connected with a back-to-back system, so that you can have the control. Why HVDC is there? Because you can control the power, number one. Number two, disturbance in one area will not go to the other side. So it is something like a roadblock for the disturbance point of view. So Bangladesh, what happens, this is their generation is very fluctuating, and their frequencies most of the time it is high, what we have seen. And that was the government decision that let us go at the connection with HVDC systems. So we have a back-to-back station with the Bangladesh. Come to the Sri Lanka also, same thing happens. So what you need is the sea-link. Sea-link means the cable. Cable means HVDC. So that is one part of it. Pakistan also, we have decided that okay, there is a small transmission line between Lahore and Amritsar. So we can make again a back-to-back. Because once you make a transmission line, after that you can back-to-back, you can add in modules. Let us say 500 initially. Pakistan need more power, another 500 megawatt module can be added. Like Bangladesh we have done. We can add 1000 megawatt with Pakistan also. That doesn't matter. But if you see Nepal and India border, it's a long border. And your power, your load is not concentrated at one point. It is from far west to far east. So if you make one DC connections, you have to make a back-to-back. So how many back-to-back you make? So it is not cost economics, number one. If you have a bulk power, let us say 2000, 3000 megawatt you can put in Nepal if you have a different type of corridor or terrain. And your transmission line also not that length is not there. So in my opinion, is because your load is also not there. And the load is 1200 megawatt or 1300 megawatt, it is practically nothing. If you connect with India, you can draw 1200 megawatt or 1500 megawatt from one node or two nodes. There is absolutely nothing going to happen in the Indian grid system. Because that system is too big for Nepal type of load. So in my opinion, the SC connection, what our team has jointly decided, 6 high capacity corridors of 400 kV double circuit quad conductors. So these are small transmission lines, and with the 1200 megawatt, 400 kV transmission line is more than enough to have a synchronous operation. So technologically, cost-wise, and everything will see, because HVDC put is a costly affair. The only part is the dynamic controls and power controls. Those things are there. That is the advantage for the HVDC. But with AC connections, with so many links, I think that is technically feasible and possible to go ahead with this. And what decision is already taken by the joint working group, by joint technical team, that is well planned way. And if you put the second interconnector, and you can have a straightforward synchronous operation, absolutely no issue. That is in my opinion.
Surenji, many countries in past had the idea that they should have their national frequency. So whenever they are interconnected to the other country grid, they should have their own frequency that should be retained. That will be their national identity of what is the Bangladesh frequency. It is this national identity through electricity also. This idea is changing now. But at the same time, as Mr. Sasmal said, if for Nepal we are going for the second interconnection, maybe if we are going for the second interconnection, our domestic network in between these two interconnections may need to be strengthened to a large extent. So, do you think any problems doing that, having a second interconnection in the synchronous AC synchronous, or will it be wise to have a second interconnection in back-to-back?
Basically, when we constructed Khalkebar-Muzaffarpur 400 kV transmission link, then probably this we should have gone back-to-back, because this transmission line is located where we have the demand. Our demand is basically concentrated in the eastern and central part of the country. And that particular transmission line should have been in that piece. But we ended up constructing a AC system. Now, this second cross-border transmission link we are talking about, we thought of developing that piece. But I think now we have changed that concept, because we already have the AC system in the eastern part of the country. We need to have another AC system to support the stability, reliability in the next grid. And as Mr. Sonsak already mentioned, back-to-back DC system is very, very expensive, and particularly when if there are no posts or very reduced posts in the beginning, to my understanding now, you see the frequencies will be controlled by the Indian market, Indian system. And India maintains a very good grid discipline. That is what I believe now, because they have around 50% of margin. Their peak demand in the system is around 170 gigawatts or something like that. But they already have 300 or over 300 gigawatt in the system. So once the bigger system maintains a very good grid discipline, I think interconnection in AC system in our case is very, very viable, and it will, to my understanding, this will not create any problem. This will maintain the stability. Our system is very small. We do have a very small system. If we draw 1,000 megawatt more also, it's not going to matter. So from that perspective, even for second cross-border link, now we should develop in ACC first.
Rajiv, India and Bangladesh, they do have a strong DC back-to-back connection now, one. And one thing that was mentioned here from Tripura side, probably that is also developed in 400 kV and charged at 130 kV in the radial mode. If this radial mode is to be removed, then this Tripura Bangladesh link is also connected with the main Bangladesh grid. They will be having two synchronous interconnections, or this 400 kV will also be changed into DC back-to-back.
No, I think to the best of my knowledge, the idea, Tripura interconnects, the idea is to connect with a synchronous system. I think there was some substation which was a bit of an issue over there. But as I understand, it will going to be a synchronous interconnection. I don't think it's. But the existing 500 megawatt is also being upgraded. So there is another 500 DC back-to-back is coming up. So that's my short answer. Okay.
Somehow in South Asia now countries are trading some power by any arrangement. We do not have accessibility to power exchanges in India, but some power being exchanged between Bhutan and India since long time, Nepal and India also. Similarly, Nepal, India and Bangladesh also. Now the question is, when we strengthen the cross-border transmission lines, what should be done first? Is it market coupling or it is grid coupling? Because market coupling, until there is a market coupling, until there is a market accessibility, the grid interconnections will not yield the results. So what should be the priority for market coupling and then grid coupling, or grid coupling market? Of course, when there is no grid, then market coupling will not result. If there is market coupling, there is no grid, it will not result, and vice versa. But in general, what should be the priority?
I think you mentioned about the power exchanges. If you, in a way, though it is not allowed to operate on exchanges, but still we have a market.
Yeah.
So still the developers in Bhutan can have access to Indian power market, not through exchanges, but through other forms of market. I believe at the end of the day, it's all about price. We can discuss about the other aspect, but unless until the price is competitive, I don't think this thing will happen anymore. To be very honest, Bhutan is able to sell one of the factories that is IG project. Tariff has been very, very low, I think 2.5 rupees, and somehow you manage to sell it. So therefore, while the technical and the grid aspect is there, the price is very important. And the whole idea of South Asian interconnection is all about price. In Bangladesh, the cost of supply could be say 6 or 7, and Indian could be say 4.5. That's actually price of trade. So if anything we do is not price competitive, irrespective of whatever the technical challenges we have, it may not materialize. Therefore, even though I won't say that market should override the other priorities, but as you understand my practical perspective, the price is very important. And therefore, the market, is very, very important.
Surunji, what should be done first? Market integration or market accessibility first, or grid interconnection first?
This is something like until there are information, the market, the trading is not going to happen. So maybe it's different for other countries. Each country has its own needs, but from Nepal's perspective, this has to be the great cost. Otherwise, you see, even if there is the market, there is the market for energy, and in the beginning, when you are building a very high capacity transmission links, when we started discussing about development of new foothold border, in the beginning we thought of developing a 5,500 megawatt capacity link. We developed that, and in the initial first 6-7 years, the flow from that line to that line expected is only 300 megawatts. Not going to support. And then again, we thought, okay, 2,500 megawatt capacity would be adequate. But maybe this even 1,500 megawatt probably would be the right choice. Therefore, in this context, the grid has to be crossed to promote the trading. That is what I think.
Yeah. The same question, Mr. Samsal. Grid interconnection first, market accessibility first, or simultaneous?
See, I told earlier also, infrastructure must be placed first. No second thought in that. Now you want to vehicles to come to the express highway, or you have to make the express highway first. Now you have to decide. You need to know the road, or you need the vehicles first to come, then you will make a road. It is something like this. So, on my opinion, first we should have a strong interconnections. And let us understand one thing. A transmission line utilization may not be very high from the beginning. We have to make a prospective planning for next 10 to 15 years. Let us not think of today, because transmission line is built once. You have to keep the design margin, you have to think everything now. Once it is built, you have to think of 15 years ahead of today. So even if you think of it, but that has to be, planning has to be made in that way. So in my opinion, once you made infrastructure, there will be a lot of players in the market. They will try to compete within themselves to give the cheaper price, whether it is coming to India or it is coming to Nepal, either. So there will be a big competition once you have an infrastructure. This is something like you make your express highway. Allow the vehicles to come. Now some small manufacturers will come and big manufacturers will come. Big vehicles with 200 kilometers speed. Some will call it 60 kilometers speed, something like this. In my opinion, I think infrastructure has to be developed and we should have the grid in position. And second thing, let me tell that because presently the regulations in the market itself in India is for only the Indian person only, for Indian traders. It has not been made for the outsiders. Now, a regulation, they are making a draft documentation for the market, for the SAARC countries. That is under preparation, maybe a few months or a few days, depends, because the draft document has already gone from our side. So it is with the regulators. So they are now coming out with a market, how it is SAARC countries interconnected, how the trading will go ahead. So one regulation is coming up. So let us hope in the next 2-3 months time, we have very clear picture when somebody want to do a trading from Nepal or from Bangladesh or from Sri Lanka to India and from India to other countries. So once the regulation in place, then I think everybody will work accordingly. But again, we must start our infrastructure development now onwards. And the hydro stations that are being coming up, let us don't make a time overrun, cost overrun. It will have a bigger impact in the market. If your price is high, 6 rupees, 8 rupees, 10 rupees, on today's contest, then there is no buyer. Be careful. That is only the picking load, maybe somebody may buy with this or higher cost during picking and other things. But if it has a regular power to the countries, any country today, so we should be very, very careful. The hydro generation must come in time and let us avoid time overrun and cost overrun of these projects.
Okay, with that, we have consumed the time allocated to us. Thank you to all the panelists and delegates who have been so patient to listen to this analysis. Thank you.
I invite the chairman of EDC Sujit to give a token of appreciation for the panelists of this session. Sorry that the appreciation gift is coming late, but we're going to hand it out to all the speakers that have done the presentation, whether yesterday or today, so starting from this session. In the next session, the last session before the last session with a couple of presentations before lunch hour is going to be focusing on the discussion of decentralized renewables and its potentials in Nepal. And we have the honor to have the presence of Her Excellency Ren Xie Tering, representing the delegation of the European Union to Nepal, to be the main chair of this session. And let me have the pleasure and honor to invite Her Excellency onto the stage to give a short address of 5 minutes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for inviting me to enable me to say a few words on this important summit. I was actually thinking I was chairing, so I haven't really prepared a big speech or anything. Let me just say a few words how close renewable energy is to the EU's heart, and let me say a few words of what we've done in the EU framework of tackling both the promotion of renewable energies and also climate change. As you know, the two are intrinsically linked. We have a very ambitious goal to focus on renewables in the EU. This was started with the summit that took place in 2012 on renewable energy, also known as the Sustainable Energy for All Summit. And there, a very ambitious game plan, also advocated by the European Commission and our development cooperation strategy, is to help in developing countries to reach 500 million people to provide them with access to renewable energies. And for that we have in the current financial framework, which runs until 2020, some 3.5 billion amounts in grant available. So this is just to say the kind of determination and commitment the EU has made. Of course, this doesn't stop by giving grants. It also looks at what the EU itself has to do in terms of meeting its greenhouse gas emission standards. And there again, the goal is quite ambitious, I should say. If we look at, for example, what we want to achieve by 2050, is that in fact, we hope that 27% of our energy will be coming from renewables. Also, as part of the Renewable Energy Summit, I think it's very important to realize that renewables and tackling climate change can go hand in hand with economic growth. If you see, we managed to push back our dependence on non-renewables, but and I think our renewables are now, I think, 12% of what we have as compared to the total picture, but economic growth in that same period has actually grown by 40%. So this is, I think, important to realize that it's not an or, but an and a win-win scenario. I think, let me tell you also a little bit of what the EU is doing here in Nepal in terms of renewables. I think we were one of the first donors here who actually tackled this. In 2002, we started with a big renewable energy project. This was mainly focusing on solar energy. We rolled this out in 21 districts across Nepal, mainly the most remote and poor districts in the Midwestern and Far Western region. And this was a project focusing on mainly solar power. And so what did it consist of? We distributed solar powers to VDCs or to villages where there was no electricity, basically to operate very crucial small infrastructures such as irrigation pumps. This enabled poor village women, for example, not to go down all the way to the rivers to take up irrigation or drinking water, but rather have a pump inside their village. Power mills, providing electricity to schools and to the village health centers, so crucial infrastructure. This is a project that's now closed. It was a 15 million project, of which 10 million was actually focusing on the procurement of solar panels at the time. And I think this is a really good example of what a donor can achieve. However, I think also what needs to be taken into account is the sustainability aspect. 2 weeks ago I went to Jumla and I stumbled upon a few VDCs where actually they still were using the solar power system which we put in place, except the big problem was that nobody had thought of replacing the batteries of the solar panels. So there is an issue of sustainability, I think, that needs to be taken into account, because otherwise, of course, all these investments end up not really being very profitable. So that is, I think, something that struck me and which we will need to look into. Nepal has, of course, a very big potential on renewable energy. Everybody talks about the biggest potential after Brazil in terms of hydropower. I think 83,000 megawatts of potential and 42,000 megawatts of economic potential. Now, the biggest problem with this is that it remains what it is, namely potential. If we see how much electricity is generated so far through hydropower, it's not sufficient to meet the demands. As we all experience on a daily basis here in Kathmandu, load shedding is a big problem. And I think of the 780 megawatts that are produced, I think the demand is now, I think, 1,300 megawatts, and it's rising 8% per year. So here again, we're faced with a big problem. Now, I think this session is so important because if the government and the donors make a real effort in tackling renewable energy, I think it would be so much a win-win situation for Nepal. And we're not only talking hydropower, which is one of the obvious solutions, but of course also solar, as we try to do with our renewable solar energy project. Wind energy can be harnessed, biomass, I think there are already 350 small biogas operating here in Nepal. This is very encouraging, and it tackles so many problems also of waste management. The EU has recently signed a small project with the Kathmandu municipality for bio-waste, and this, in fact, it's a collection of bio-waste materials that are then put into this incinerator that also produce, I think in the beginning only 18 kilowatt of power, but I mean it's a start. So it's again a double whammy, addressing the waste management problem and also looking at alternative ways of producing eco-friendly energy. It's a pity that today I couldn't be joined by our colleagues from the European Investment Bank. They're based in Brussels, so we don't have an office here yet. But why do I want to talk about the European Investment Bank? It's because they're very active in Nepal, actually in the very complex and challenging environment of SAARC and SASEC. We are also helping SASEC, and one of the projects we have been supporting, again through the EIB, with 95 million euros is the Trishuli transmission line. Here also we have coupled accompanied the soft loan with a 2.5 million grant to also make sure that the villages where the transmission line goes through will also be equipped with electricity, which is not normally the case. Then the last project is also a transmission line project. The former one I was discussing was with KfW. This one is again, I think, with ADB. Also a 95 million project, and it's also transmission lines and the establishment of a substation. So as Rajan Shrestha from our delegation here in Kathmandu, he is our energy specialist, so in case you have any other questions, he will also be happy to respond to that. And please also feel free to consult our webpage and our Facebook pages and Twitter on the EU delegation, what we're doing here in Nepal. So let me close here, and thanks again for giving me this opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much again, Her Excellency. So, Suji, I think it's time that we present you with the token of appreciation. Thank you very much, Grace. Thank you very much. Morning session, and it's going to do the concluding remark after the before lunch. So next we're going to go on for the next session, which is I'd like to have the pleasure to introduce you Michelle Thapa, who is the Vice Chairperson of EDC and Managing Director of Sara Uja Nepal. And let me do a brief introduction for Mr. Thapa, who has moderated a very interesting panel discussion yesterday. So Mr. Thapa is a recognized expert on energy. He currently serves as the MD of Surau Uja Nepal Private Limited. The company actually uses distributed renewable energy system to deliver energy as a service to a wide range of consumers. And Mr. Thapa also served as a legal specialist for Art Finance, where he advises on energy lending through financial institutions. In addition, he routinely served as advisor to leading public and private sector clients, and he previously served as a managing director at ICF International India, which is a global advisory service provider on energy and environment. So Mr. Thapa is also the vice chairman of EDC. Let's give a big hand to Michelle.
Thank you. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be here and to have an opportunity to discuss this subject. As you can sort of tell from the title, I've taken a pretty big bite. It's a pretty daunting title, but it's very intentional. You know, trying to do this title is a bit like trying to climb Mount Everest without the ropes. And as you know, except our Sherpas, nobody can quite do that. So I take the unenvious task of trying to tackle this. But I want to share with it from my perspective of a very small company that I own. We have 7 people. We do solar systems. We are not some large multinational. We're not funded out of the US or UK. So this presentation that you'll see mixes a bit of reason. It mixes a bit of emotion. But I think it tells you a story that begins to hopefully challenge the hypothesis and present an alternate view for Nepal that is compelling, but if followed, can also provide a pretty remarkable change. So first, we began with this observation. The energy crisis in Nepal is nothing except a failure of imagination. What does that mean? Obviously, you've heard to the last day we haven't been able to build plants, we haven't been able to build transmission lines, we don't have finance, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. But when you cut through all of that, what does it mean? It means at some point, our minds have stopped working. We stopped imagining, kind of like a picture. If you close your eyes and you see what you just saw 5 minutes ago, and that is the only thing you can imagine, that is where progress begins to halt. That is where challenges come. So for us, the most important thing is be able to reimagine, to create imagination, because that is the most necessary component in today's Nepal's energy crisis. You know, the failure of imagination also, it turns out to be a pretty good investment opportunity. And I guess if we were a big multinational, we would have gone and hired McKinsey, Boston Consulting, or somebody to scope it out for us. But instead, we found our management consultants in 4th and 6th graders in a little underprivileged school in Kathmandu, and we asked them to draw what the future looks like. And this is one of the paintings. So we had a little competition. We said, we get art pieces, draw a future, write poetry, write some Twitter blog lines, whatever. And we got a very interesting set of outputs. So what we decided is that imagination is really what captures the aspirations of a generation. And that is what our businesses should be about. That is what we want to be about. So we created a company called Saralocha Nepal, which translates into simple energy, it's simplicity, and we figured that we weren't really like technology missionaries, but we were just people that wanted to use the imagination of a generation to be able to do something that challenges or overcomes the current challenges. So we set up this company as a private limited company, and hopefully, or what we want it to be, is a distributed energy services company, and I'll talk about what that means a bit more. But it's also important for you to understand one other dimension. That is, it's important to understand that as we take on this business and as we take on this challenge, we are emotionally invested in this enterprise. This is not some business model that we're experimenting on. This is not some pilot test case that we're doing. We live here. Our fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters and uncles and aunts all live here. Our spouses live here. Our children live here. This is home to us. This is where we construct futures. So unless we are invested in this business, in this place, we cannot succeed. So it is a business with conviction. It is a business with emotion. And this is what I mean. If we cannot aspire to be slightly different, if we degenerate simply to what the status quo is, there's no difference between being here or going to the Middle East and polishing some sheikh's shoes. So for us, business is not about just overcoming the challenge, but it's also about being invested. And this is what the investment represents, a very emotional attachment to what we're trying to do. So, what is the bets that we made? The first bet that we made is that renewable energy and distributed renewable energy should be or could be one of the most compelling solutions for Nepal in the current context. We look at two dimensions of where this potential comes from. If you look on the left, you will see that just under half of our population doesn't have any access to electricity. If you look on the right, slightly over half have access to electricity, but a very poor reliability. If you work through the numbers of that, and you look at what distributed technologies, distributed renewable energy technologies could do, you will see all of a sudden that actually the potential is significant if you can address that demand. And we'll talk about where all of this comes from. The numbers are staggering. And if you create the right environment, my bet is that within 5 years, Nepal could have more distributed renewable energy systems than they are grid-connected hydro systems. And I think that is the imagination I'm offering to you. And that is the imagination under which we are trying to build our enterprise. So, where does it come from? What leads us to believe that hypothesis? The first is that distributed energy technologies today have reached an inflection point. And I didn't know what picture to put to demonstrate that inflection point, except I found this Ralph Lauren bag. It costs about $290 if you want to buy it. And it is a bag that has a little flap of a solar panel. And if it's good enough for Ralph Lauren, I'm betting that you can distribute it pretty widely and it worked pretty well. In other words, today's renewable energy technologies, distributed renewable energy technologies, are such in terms of quality that you can distribute it at scale in the millions and be comfortable that it will work. Just like we distribute televisions, we distribute TVs, we distribute mixers, whatever. Just like any other household product, distributed renewable energy technologies have crossed that inflection point. The power of distributed renewable energy technologies only come when there's somebody to distribute it in the first place. And this is where the potential begins to take shape. And this is the potential that we are betting on. The second is about our prognosis of what the evolution of Nepal's power sector is going to be. And I present to you a series of what I call crystal gazing hypothesis about what will happen, why distributed energy technologies will have more of a role in Nepal. The first is the statement, the truth will eventually catch up in terms of the understatement of demand. Today's energy demand is significantly understated, significant, order of magnitude. If you were to add more and more capacity, add more and more renewable through the grid, centralized through the grid, you will find that demand will continue to increase as latent demand comes in the system, right? So just simply adding new capacity, 1,000 megawatts, 2,000 megawatts, 3,000 megawatts, is not going to solve the demand. This is going to be a persistent problem. The second is that power sector reform, everybody's investing in power sector reforms. All of our donors are investing, government is committed, every budget has a new line in power sector reforms. But they will remain namesake. Fundamentally, the core challenges of what our power sector reforms need, which is a separation of politics from the business of power sector, is not going to occur. So the centralized grid is going to fumble, NEA will go through its processes, the government will go through its processes, and power sector reforms will continue to remain what they are. Nice set of idealized reforms that will never really achieve what I think is intended to achieve. That doesn't mean that all large grid-connected systems will not occur. It will. But the development of these projects will continue to be very, very opportunistic. New transmission lines will get built, new plants will get built, but it's opportunistic. It's not like there will be a wholesale change where big markets will be created and financiers will be doing it. There's a systematic change. Because without that systematic change, all this development will continue to remain opportunistic. A few plants will get built, a few lines will get built, and the grid will continue to expand, but it is not at the scale that can deliver the needs that is required. So what will happen? Our bet is that you will end up seeing two sort of tiered grid system, in which you have a grid, the centralized grid, that begins to serve reliable electricity to a segment of the demand. In some sense, that's already happening, right? You have mechanisms through which certain industries can get very specific feeder lines to have reliable, continuous 24/7 power. As that begins to occur more and more, this notion of a two-tier system isn't just, is something that has to happen simply by the nature of this demand and by the nature of this business. So within this space of this two-tier grid, renewable energy now suddenly begins to play a role. Distributed renewable energy technologies begin to play a role where they will meet the needs of small households, small commercial load, small enterprises. And this is where the future and potential of these technologies are paramount. But there's a number of things that needs to happen in order to get us there. But this is the scenario. And I think this, in our view, is the most realistic and plausible scenarios in today's context. So, as I mentioned, distributed renewable energy systems is what fits nicely within this two-tier grid, and why distributed renewable energy technologies is the one that makes sense, both in terms of scale, why it can be a far more compelling solution. But notice that it doesn't, distributed renewable energy technologies are not displacing the grid. It is not saying that, it is at the expense of the grid. What it is saying is that it is supplementing it By introducing this within the portfolio, by looking at this as a part of the overall energy mix, you are in effect creating a far more stable, a far more reliable, and a far better system overall. Distributed energy technologies are a part of the grid, and that's what this hypothesis is about. So, what are the challenges we need to try to address? The first one actually is very, very psychological. And so let me explain this a little bit, and I pick up my favorite story about Jimmy Carter. And I don't know if you can see that picture very well, but it's Jimmy Carter sitting in the White House, and he's giving a speech on the energy report, as he calls it, shortly after he took office. I think this was almost a month or so after he took office. And if you look at that picture carefully, you see he's wearing a sweater, he's wearing a cardigan. And this was the time of the oil embargo. He was wearing a cardigan, he's not wearing a blazer. And one of the things he talks about is how you can reduce the temperature a little bit. And you begin to make sacrifices. So I'll read you the sentence he says. We must face the fact that the energy shortage is permanent. This is his lines from his speech. There is no way we can solve it quickly. But if we all cooperate and make modest sacrifices, if we learn to live thriftily and remember the importance of helping our neighbors, then we can find ways to adjust to make our society more efficient and our lives more enjoyable and productive. On the whole, it's a pretty nice sentence. But as it turns out, not many people like to make sacrifices. So, if you take Jimmy Carter's speech and translate it to our context, what does it mean? It means when we have an energy crisis, we cannot be complacent just waiting for our cooking gas. We cannot simply adjust. What has the crisis taught the people of Nepal? It hasn't taught us to make change, but what it has taught us is how to adjust. We are better now at living with shorter and shorter amount of energy supply. We're better at cooking with fuel wood than we were. So it hasn't really made any change. This was Carter's downfall. This is where the challenges started for Carter. If you're going to tell the American people that you have to wear sweaters and turn down the thermostat because it's more efficient, it is a tough sell. Subsequent election, Carter loses. What I'm trying to tell you is that the psychological problem we have to overcome is that we cannot continue to adapt to be a distributed regime. So our goal remains that we're trying to raise an energy lending fund that is specifically designed to support the creation and growth of this distributed regime. Across our work in India, we are seeing, at least for the first time, we work very closely with microfinancing institutions, the creation of very specific energy lending funds. So for the first time, 4 weeks ago, I saw one $4 million fund that went from the US fund to a microfinance institution earmarked for energy lending, to a fairly small microfinance institution. It was at 14.5%. If a lender is giving to a microfinance institution at 14.5%, and the microfinance institution is on lending for energy, and it is still profitable, you can imagine what sort of margins are being presented. This is a very compelling proposition. It is, as I said at the very beginning, profitable to invest its imagination. All you have to do is kind of have the courage to be able to look at it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much again, Bishop. So the next speaker is going to be Mr. Ram Prasad Ditto, who is the Executive Director of the Alternative Energy Promotion Center in Nepal. So Ram is the Executive Director of Alternative Energy Promotion Center, which is under the Ministry of Science, Technology and Environment, and is the focal organization for the promotion and development of renewable energy technologies in Nepal. And currently, the government of Nepal has initiated a new program called National Rural and Renewable Energy Program, as a single national program for the development of renewable energy sector in the country. A consortium of EDPs with the Danida, right, and then Norway, DFID, UNDP, KFW, GIZ, and SMV has supported AEPC for the implementation of this program. So we may hear from Ram for some more details about this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Excellency, Madam Chair, dear participants. Let me thank the organizer for inviting me to speak on behalf of Alternative Energy Promotion Center. I'll be actually sharing our ideas why renewable energy is important in the context of Nepal. Let me begin with the content of my presentation. I'll be very brief in introducing, of course, you got information already from previous speakers in the energy sector of Nepal, but I'll be actually trying to link with the renewable energy. What are the policy, front in the sector? I'll be also very brief in introducing the development partners, actually recent engagement in the sector. What are the investment opportunities, of course, challenges, and I'll conclude by highlighting my future. As you can see, the energy total energy consumption. This is the figure from last year. Actually, it was around 14,000 million tons of oil equivalent, close to 330 million gigajoule. We are heavily dependent on traditional fuel and imported fuels, even though we claim that we're rich in hydro sources, but our access so far has been, if you see the access, almost 75% of the total households have got access, including 50% from renewable energy. Access does not necessarily mean that you get 24-hour supply. As Madam Chair was mentioning, earlier also, we have scheduled load setting, we have problem even in urban areas. If you see the consumption pattern, again, almost 90% of our total energy actually goes in the residential sector, and the per capita energy consumption is very low. 16, one of the lowest in the world. This slide is to show you the trend. If you see 2004-2005 figure, actually renewable energy contribution was very less. In the total energy consumption, again, traditional energy used to be the dominant, is still the dominant factor. But over the last 10 years, if you see the figure, this was just based on, last week in an economic survey, as you can see, from 88% to, it has come down to 55%, and the share of renewable energy has actually increased from 0.5% to close to 3%. And of course, the commercial energy consumption also has been increased, because basically in the LPG and cooking sector, gas. This slide is to show you the institutional mechanism. In the left, as you can see, the hydropower, the traditional big hydropower project is being dealt by NEA and Ministry of Energy. The fossil fuel, petroleum, is being dealt by Nepal Oil Corporation, whereas we are somehow involved in renewable. Basically, two ministries, Ministry of Population and Environment, and very recently, Ministry of Federal Affairs and Local Development also has started, this renewable energy activities. But the whole sector is being coordinated by National Planning Commission, and Council of Ministers is the, decision making. Here, I just would like to introduce my organization. Alternative Energy Promotion Center was established in 1996. We are the national focal agency for renewable energy technologies, promotion, and all those things. We are currently at the Ministry of Population and Environment. We used to be under the Ministry of Science and Technologies, but since the ministry has been divided and we are under Environment Ministry, our mandate is to support government in making plan and policy related to renewable energy. We, of course, are responsible for maintaining quality at the field level, at the regional level, and also we support government in in preparing standards and guidelines at the central level. The objective is to improve living standard of rural people through renewable energy. We are involved in mini and micro hydro, solar technology, biogas, energy efficiency also in rural area we promote improved slopes, biomass technology, wind energy also. Very recently we've also started, biofuel. Our approach is to, we follow public-private partnership model where, public sector actually creates, supports private sector in creating demand. We also, prepare the guideline, quality assurance mechanism, the subsidy, and all those things is under our regime, whereas private sector's role is to actually, install systems, provide after-sales service, the internal quality control, and finally the user gets benefit from both private sector and public sector. This slide is to show you what are the prospects in the sector. Here I actually, try to divide this into national context and the international context. In the national context, in terms of our geophysical situation, we are good in hydro resources because of air and flow, all those things. But for all other, agriculture, we agro-based economy. That's why we have, biomass sources. Because of our location, we have very good sunshine, solar rays also. In terms of policy front, energy promotion has been there since 1985 in every policy documents. Very recent also, Prime Minister's speech, the last budget also very clearly highlighted the importance of energy. We have very good, I would say, favorable situations in terms of policy. Not only the technical assistance, but also we do provide financial support through subsidy policy. The private sector of the government has ambitious plan of providing clean cooking and lighting solution for all by 2017. But there has been some problem because of earthquake, economic blockade, and so on. A very good private sector. And these 2 points actually, because of our heavily, high dependence on traditional, we need to find alternative. We need to, we need to work in the renewable energy sector. One more point. So the way forward for, from our side, as I was mentioning, we want the central renewable energy fund fully to actually provide loan and other financial support. From our AEPC, we would like to be established as a center for excellence in technical aspects. We have established the Center for Excellence on hydro, micro hydro, but we want to expand our activities in solar and biogas. Capacity development facility has to be there at all levels of governance. Technology, from kilowatt to megawatt in case of micro hydro, whereas in case of solar from 1 kilowatt, biogas from household based, domestic biogas to institutional, loan support. The coverage, as I was mentioning before also, our focus used to be in rural areas, but because of very recent decision of the government, we are now, expanding our activities in urban areas as well. And then the final and last point here is to encourage, to attract private sector to invest in the project. So with this, if you have any questions.
Of appreciation to you, presented by Mr. Suji. Thank you very much. So now comes the toughest session of the day. We are 30 minutes away from lunch. And let me have the honor to introduce you Dr. Tika Limbu, who's head of Portfolio Management Unit of Asian Development Bank. Optimization and operation, power sector regulatory affairs, investment analysis, project administration, and portfolio management. So I also have the honor to invite the panelists of this panel discussion onto the stage as well. Mr. Kushal Guran, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Wind Power Nepal. Mr. Andy Moon, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Sun Farmers. Praching Shrestha, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Suba Biomass. And Mr. Gopal Babu Bhattarai, who is the Deputy Managing Director of Nepal Electricity Authority. And last but not the least, let's invite Vivek Sharpane, right, who's the energy advisor of the Norwegian Embassy. I'll hand it over to Dr. Tika.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. How long do I take?
I think it's about 30 minutes.
Sorry? Okay, thank you very much. So before throwing any questions to my panelists, I think I don't need to introduce, I think it's mostly done. So for the sake of time, so let me quickly go through my house rule. Each panelist will be given question to answer for 2 to 3 minutes only. There will be 2 to 3 questions to each. And in the end, we'll have a Q&A session with the audience as well, and we'll allow maximum of 5 questions to audience. There will be 1 person helping with the microphone. Before I start, I think let me give a brief background of my understanding of the power sector, and especially this renewable energy. The traditional energy sources like fossil fuel are depleting. They pollute the environment. Large hydro resources are also limits. There are limited hydro sites. There is environmental and sustainability implications too. There are good reasons for developing the renewable energy, which is RE, such as wind and solar, that is renewable and abundant. Power engineers suggest there should be an optimal mix of energy sources in the grid with peak, base, renewable, distributed generation for the reliability, security and economy. We can see space for renewable energy technologies. No one will disagree either. Germany, Spain, China, India all have done tremendous progress in the RETs. It is said that Nepal has also potential of over 3,000 megawatt of wind energy, and solar grid connect PV for 2,000 and 2,000 of megawatt of concentrated solar generation. The wind technology cost is already at grid parity, and solar are also coming to parity soon, whereas hydropower also has capital implication, it is capital intensive. However, Nepal has developed insignificant renewable energy which cannot be counted. I think it may not be even 1 megawatt if we start counting. So, as Vishalji already mentioned, that there must be something wrong in our imagination process. Our imagination process must have failed to imagine. So there must be strong reasons why Nepal does not have any development and doesn't have any pipeline. So we will discuss on this issue, and we'll listen from our experts on this underlying reason and the way forward. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here. So I think we'll start our question from Kusal, Mr. Kusal Guru. He's the CEO of Wind Power.
Thank you.
My question would be, okay, let me go through. Nepal has developed insignificant in terms of renewable energy resources. So what do you think has gone wrong? Quick question, 2 to 3 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you. I think many things might have gone wrong, and all this kind of mix of all the mishaps that has happened so far up to date. But to be looking into international practices, I think I can point out into some few measures that would usually come from top down that has gone wrong, specific targets and supporting policy framework to achieve those targets. If you look into, say, our neighbor India or even China, so they always have this ambitious target in a certain time of time, and they have managed to achieve that so far. And to manage those targets, they always come up with the policies that will support all the activity that is going towards to achieve those targets. In our country, probably we don't have target, or if we have target, then maybe it's not ambitious enough. And if there are policies, which I read it out. If there are any supporting policies, then the problem so far has been in implementing those policies effectively. Or that's our thing somewhere else.
Okay, so it's like that. We have a target. If you look at the government policies, if you look at the 13th 3-year plan, we have a target. I mean, definitely. But yes, we may have target. Or it's like there is a target, but there is no any means, or there is no any tools, there is no any program. So thank you very much for that. And now my second panelist, Mr. Andy. You are from Sun Pharma, so definitely the question will be again with regard to Sun. Like as I said already, the Germany, Spain, China, India, they have done a tremendous progress in sun as well as wind. All have done. I mean, however, what is the issue with Nepal? That that constant development of this wind as well as sun. Please.
Sure. So the vast majority of solar that's been deployed so far in the world has been grid-tied solar energy. In Nepal, until now, most of the solar energy technology is actually off-grid. And we think that will remain a huge opportunity in Nepal because the grid is not going to reach the very, very remote areas in the mountains, places that are very far from the central grid. So we think that moving forward, there will be a huge opportunity for solar, which can be built anywhere without a central grid, to continue to grow in many of these remote areas outside of the major cities. For places like Germany and Spain and the United States, solar is a long-term asset. It takes a long time, and it takes a long-term view for solar to really scale up. And what really opened the door in the United States and Europe was eliminating the risk to the customer. So what happened was third-party banks and third-party financing parties agreed to sign up for 20-year, 25-year investments in solar. And customers were also willing to sign 20 to 25-year power purchase agreements to purchase all of the solar electricity that was generated. And so in these countries, having customers that are willing to take the long-term view, having investors willing to take the long-term view, and eliminating that risk for the customers is really what the key was to scaling up. And in order to get investors comfortable, it's important that the customers will be around for a long time, as well as policy and regulatory schemes are solid, and investors can feel confident that they will actually get all of the money that is promised in the power purchase agreements. And so I think one encouraging step is NEA that's recently announced that they're willing to pay 9.6 rupees per unit for grid-tied solar. So that's very promising. I think that's in the same direction. There does need to be some subsidy in order to make that financially viable, but NEA is obviously an institution that an investor could be confident will be around for at least 20 years.
Okay, thank you very much for that. But looks like in Nepal, when we talk about this renewable, the renewables are for those places where the grid cannot be connected. As opposed to what Vishalji has already mentioned, that there should be a concept of distributed generation. And when if your plans, if your renewable energy policies and your the programs, etc., and even the AEPC, if their main target is to the area where there cannot be a grid or where the grid cannot be connected, and there only you think of renewable energy, then definitely you can't generate 10-15% or 20% of the grid demand. Or what's your thought on that?
Well, I think what's really impressive is if you look at Bangladesh, for example, Bangladesh has already done 3.5 million solar home systems, and that adds up to megawatts. So even if each system is only 50 watts, when you multiply that by millions, all of a sudden you're talking 15, 20 megawatts. So I think in Nepal, I think there's definitely a huge opportunity for the remote areas as well. Nepal is 70% agricultural, and so we're doing a lot of work with solar power irrigation systems that are 100 watts to 250 watts to a couple of kilowatts for each system. But there's so many farmers. I think there's 2.5 million farmers in Nepal who benefit from solar power irrigation, and so that alone will be a multi-megawatt market.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll go to that question again. Prachin, we have, I think you belong to biomass. We had recently, we just passed through a very difficult situation. We you could see long queue of moms and dads in fuel station or the gas, for the cooking gas. So how has the recent fuel shortage in Nepal changed the way people access to energy and use energy? And what do you see the role of the bioenergy in Nepal in 10 years' time from now?
Thank you for the question. So, talking about the recent fuel crisis, I'm pretty sure people who live in the urban areas got affected somehow. So myself too, I switched to electricity, with the heat electricity cooking, and then I also had an option of using my own briquettes or using firewood as the fuel during the crisis. So with the crisis, we are very much dependent on fossil fuel. We talk about LPG gas cooking at home. We use petrol for vehicles, and then we use even kerosene for cooking. But in my opinion, it's mostly urban areas who got affected, and mostly commercial restaurants and industries who got affected by this. But if you look at the rural areas, they had zero effect on this because they are already using biomass as their source of fuel for cooking. So my opinion, I definitely think people got more aware that they are pretty much dependent on imported fuel. So they were looking for options. So during the period of crisis, I got a lot of calls saying, hey, can I use briquettes for cooking? And I even replaced a couple of restaurants where they were dependent on LPG, and they switched to pretty much biomass-based cooking. And they found it was cheaper, so they decided they plan to continue with it. Although it has gone down with LPG back available right now, they got the awareness of, hey, we still have the option of biomass. And if we get the right technology, it's cheaper and it can be as efficient as LPG. Like for example, in Chitwan, I had a small bakery which was using LPG gas for cooking donuts. He initially disagreed that firewood can't replace LPG. So I took him a cook stove, a 4-star cook stove with my briquettes, and it worked for him, and it saved him almost 50% of his fuel cost. And for the cook stove, he just recovered his money within a month or so. So definitely there is a lot of potential to replace LPG in various sectors. So I think fuel prices, in a way, it was alert for us to find a different alternative for fuel.
Okay, thank you. Definitely, I think do people started forgetting already, or they really found it as a best option or a good option for the cooking?
No, there are a lot of people who are back to LPG, but there are a couple of commercial restaurants who have decided they will be cooking certain process like daily cooking on biomass, and will be using a small, short-term cooking for LPG.
So is there any sort of assessment of this fuel switching to your this biomass and briquettes, in last?
No, there has been assessment. So I have details on just a couple of projects that I've been doing. But overall, for the state of the country, we don't have any reports, I think. APC has done some couple of studies, and they've even done biomass electrification in Tanabu and Rotterdam, I think. And Windrock has done a couple of biomass electrification projects in that area.
Okay, thank you, President. So we'll come back to this question again. Now, question to Bapalji, Bhattaraji. When we talk about electricity or energy, sometimes energy is the electricity in Nepal. Most of the time it's misnomer, I would say. But EA has a big role. If we are to really develop distributed generation, whether it's solar or wind power or any other means of renewable energy, and put it in the grid. However, because as per NEA's mandate, it's a utility. Definitely, I mean, NEA wouldn't be very interested or may not have very incentive to connect renewable energy to your grid, because there is no any like a mandatory requirement. You don't need that certain percentage of your sale or your supply should be made with renewable energy. So in this, so what are the roles that or initiatives NEA could play, for making space for renewable energy in the grid? Any thought?
Thank you, Jimuji. NEA is the only utility responsible for majority of generation and for transmission and distribution also. It is the main key player in transmission and distribution, or whether we can say it is called transmission and distribution utility also. So if we talk about the renewables, all our electricity generation is from renewable. It is from hydro. There is very less than 1%, very minimum generation from thermal. So out of this hydro, there is majority from NEA one hydro. It is 47% and 25% from the IPPs, and the rest we have imports from India. This is the situation last year, and then the imports will increase from India this time. So far as this, we are only concerned with the renewable, but so when we talk about other renewables like solar and wind energy, that NEA is fully government-owned utility, and we follow the policies taken by the government, endorsed by the government. Recently, government has approved energy crisis management action plan, and in this action plan, they mentioned that there should be around 5 to 10% of the total generation should be from the renewables like solar, wind, biomass, cogeneration, etc. So, looking at this one, that NEA has a big role in using this renewable energy. It is NEA is responsible for making the PPA with the private producers. It is responsible for transmission. It is responsible for distribution, and NEA is responsible for making transmission, reinforcement, extension, substation, reinforcement, extension, as well as distribution line reinforcement and extensions for renewables, so including hydro, solar, or whatever it is. So we have a vital role that because all the government's rules and policies are implemented through NEA. So we have the major role in.
So having said that, like do you have any sort of specific policy that will really promote renewable energy connection, like solar or wind power or anything that comes to the grid? Do you, like if some entrepreneur comes and say that, okay, I have a 10 megawatt of plant to generate, is there any policy outside that you can give the connection or make a PPA or sort of arrangement?
No, there is no such policy, but whenever there are private developers, we have developed a transmission line as required. Transmission line substation is required. So if there is no clear policy, but we are doing that. As a part of the government instruction or regulation, we extend the transmission and distribution systems required to evacuate power from the renewables.
Okay, thank you very much. I have another question, but I will come back to your some good responses later. So I think now we have Vivekji representing development partners. Development partners, particularly we say DP, support and intervention in renewable energy are more on the off-grid. That I mean, we already knew that our Excellency already mentioned that we are mostly working in the off-grid. Even this NRREP or AEPC through AEPC, it's all to do with the off-grid. And government's renewable energy policy and our own intervention are also not very clear on the grid connect, solar or wind energy development. And there have not been any decisive policy plan and program to promote renewable energy, to be honest. For the, I'm talking about this grid connect, because we don't have any grid connected renewable energy as such, except the small hydro. So, do you see any hope of, now I'm coming back to, this government's recent policy and program. It says that the government has envisaged developing 300 megawatt of solar farming in a year. Or it can, of course it can be in a year, it may take few years. But, the budget speech says, it envisages developing 300 megawatt of solar farming. So, given this, the policy, the framework, and the appetite of connecting to grid by NEA and the lack of strong mechanism. What's your view that whether this 300 megawatts of wind farming, solar farming could be realized? Is it possible that the government can realize in 2 years' time, or what could be the our role for short term, medium term, or long term, so that we can really have 300 megawatt of solar farming in, say, in 2 years or 3 years' time?
Okay, that was a lot of questions actually, but it's very tricky to represent a development partner and give an opinion about the country's plan of 300 megawatts one way or the other. So I have to be very careful about how I say this. But I think it's good for us to first look back at your earlier part of the question. I think the development partners, started looking at the energy market, the largest energy market that was underserved in Nepal, primarily the off-grid, and saw that there was a need to provide attention to this market. And this is where I think 15, 20 years ago this thing came about. I think we're a long way from that time, and I think times have changed. But you are right in saying that on the rural energy program, the focus primarily is to look at that market that is very large, that is probably the one that is consuming most of the energy and is significantly underserved. So that I think is fair to say. But I think times have changed. What started out as a subsidy-based sort of market starter, as you can start hearing from some presentations, presentations by Vishal and companies like Sun Farmer are now questioning this subsidy-based expansion of solar PV systems or renewables, when there actually is a possibility of the private sector to come in without without letting the subsidy to be a bottleneck, rather than subsidy was a market starter, but now it can be a bottleneck. So I think in that context, we have to look at the off-grid and how can we promote primarily convert the private sector into, rather than selling equipment, selling energy services. I think this is the move that I think Nepal has to make now. Going back to your question about 300 megawatts, I think we have to understand where this came from. I think this came from during the blockade time, when Nepal was under even more severe energy crisis, if you will, than we are already in. So I mean, as an energy sort of observer, the market, I'd like to say that I think there needs to be a sound technical follow through behind the political rhetoric. I I think the 300 megawatt was something that came out of that crisis. And I had the opportunity to discuss with some policymakers about this. And I asked them, under the current scenario, when there's a blockade and we cannot, move equipment, we're not going to be able to, install 300 megawatts in the next half a year. We can only do this when there is smooth flow of supplies. But are we still going to be committed to this? At least from the government policies, with the feed-in tariff, the commitment is still there. But my concern is that I think for the government and the developed partners, particularly the multilaterals, we have to find a way not to crowd out the private sector and allow for the private sector to come in to address the renewable energy sort of ambitions that Nepal has today. And I think you asked an earlier question about NE as well. We have to also come out of this or that. Nepal is a hydro-rich country. So the questions always come in, well, why should the government not provide 8 rupees per kilowatt to hydro while you are willing to provide 9 rupees for solar? But the answer to that is that you need a healthy balance in the generation mix, and it doesn't necessarily only have to be hydro. So I think there is an opportunity to look at renewables and try to find a way to get the private sector in. The danger, of course, is that if I think today, let's not lead with a subsidy or a grant-based approach to renewable energy, but more as a feed-in tariff that the private sector can come in and provide those energy services. I don't know if I answered your question, but I don't think within the year there will be a 300 megawatt of solar installed. I will be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, thanks. Definitely, installing 300 megawatt of solar plant is not a joke. It needs a lot of assessments, a lot of homework. We have been seeing here that ADB and World Bank, we each have 25 megawatt of solar, solar plant to be installed. It's been there for the last 2 to 3 years. Still haven't moved. So it's difficult. But having said that, feed-in tariff definitely is also a sort of tools of cross subsidy. So
that even now, if the government comes up with a conducive business environment, if there is an opportunity for investment, it makes a business sense for investors. And in terms of Nepal, so now because we're starting from a zero, I think that first and foremost, it will be more policies to.
What is the government is required to do?
Sure. The government always talks about bringing in private sector, but we see so much potential to generate biomass electrification units. There are sugar plants in Nepal who generate their own electricity. So I think.
So sorry, gentlemen, guys. So we're not only 5 minutes away from lunch. So if you don't mind, just take your seat. Because I'm gonna have the honor to introduce Her Excellency Ranjay Tiri back to the stage in conclusion of this session, and then we will do the appreciation session afterwards. So thank you very much. If you can take your seat just for a while. Thank you.
Very challenging meeting, very challenging debate, very good presentations. What I myself take along from this is that we cannot be complacent. Unfortunately, probably we will not take on board the lessons learned on the challenges we faced also after the blockade. So what we really need to do is work together with the government to put in place an enabling environment and to take this, all the stimulating ideas that were discussed here forward. So the biggest challenge is implementation. And as EU, we of course stand ready as part of the development partners to help in this, as I said also with the EIB. The off-grid, I think it offers so many possibilities. So a myriad of interesting things that need to be done. But let's keep the hopes up high that this will actually be translated into good policies and that we can see that Nepal can actually take on the role as a trailblazer on the energy mix with putting a lot of innovative ways in its way of addressing the current energy crisis. Maybe one word of what struck me during the discussion, the emphasis on biomass replacing, for example, LPG. I really wonder whether that is such a good idea, but I'm not an expert. But what I saw during the blockade here is that many people, in fact, indeed were resorting to fuel wood again. But it also has very negative consequences for the forestry. I think one area where Nepal has made really good strides is in the community management of forests. And it was sad to see that many trees were being cut down already in Shivapuri. So biomass, yes, but please let's do it very, intelligently and not compromising the very good progress that was made in guaranteeing sustainable forest cover of Nepal, because that is again very important for climate change mitigation and for helping the country deal with floods and everything. So that's a small observation. And let me thank all the panelists for very stimulating and good debates, and also my thanks to the two speakers who made excellent presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much again, Your Excellency. So this is the last session, and I would like to thank again our moderator and all the panelists here.
Thank you.